Okay, 2-minute warning is up, and let's get started. Welcome to today's webinar, iPads in the Enterprise. My name is Jim Prothy, and I will be hosting today's event. With me today is John Barnes, CTO of Model Metrics. Today, we'll give you a brief introduction to Model Metrics, walk through who is using iPads in the enterprise, cover some use cases in mobile strategy, and lastly, give you a live demo of an app that we've built for enterprise use. We'll finish up with what a customizable application is for the iPad, how apps can be distributed through an enterprise, and close with some Q&A. We'll do our best to get through our content in about a half an hour so you can get back to your day. And last thing before we get started, we'll be recording today's event, and it will be available for download about an hour after we finish. As questions arise, please free to submit them through GoToWebinar's interface or submit them to us through Twitter at Model Metrics Inc. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Barnes, CTO of Model Metrics. John?
Thank you, Jim. I'm very excited to talk today about the iPad in the enterprise, which I think is a very exciting development that we're really seeing across our enterprise client base. So a couple seconds on who Model Metrics is. We're a cloud computing focused services firm. We were founded in 2003. We've been around for over 8 years now. We've done over 1,500 projects and have really grown up with the public cloud, primarily focusing on Salesforce.com, Amazon Web Services, and Google. But what we've really found is it's been very important for our clients to take the cloud offline or take the cloud to a mobile device. And so what we've really developed over the last several years is mobile expertise across all of the major mobile platforms, focusing especially on iOS, but we also do work on Android, BlackBerry, and some of the other mobile platforms. And what we create for our clients are custom mobile applications. And we'll get into what that really means in just a second. Yeah, so the first question a lot of people ask are, who are buying iPads? This is obviously a very hot consumer device, but in terms of the enterprise, where's the adoption and who are buying these? So let's talk about a couple different customer examples that have kind of come public and are really making the leap into taking the iPad to their employee base. So Medtronic is a great example, very large medical device company. So a quote here from Mike Hedges, their CIO, and really talking about how using the iPad across their sales organization has really helped them do things in a much different way. And this is kind of a common theme that we've seen is people using the iPad to do their daily job in a much different way, not just mobilizing an existing business process. And we'll get into some specifics in a second in terms of how the iPad can really help a sales organization at a large company. Salesforce.com is one of our partners. We're a premier partner of theirs. We're very close to them. And here's a quote from Mark Benioff, their CEO. They're talking about the fact that he's using his iPad more and more and moving away from his PC. And he really is calling this the year of the tablet. And since we are close to Salesforce, we know that the iPad is very important to them both internally and externally. And they're creating specific applications for the iPad, such as their chat collaboration application. And they really believe in the tablet. So why is the iPad so special? I assume most of you probably are very familiar with what an iPad is. I know a few of you may not have had a chance to actually play with one, or maybe you don't have one. But what's great about an iPad versus using a traditional laptop or even a Windows tablet of yesterday is these are instantly on. So you just touch the button, it's on, it's ready to go. You don't have to wait for a boot up. So if you're in front of a customer, there's no cycle time waiting for an application to start up. It's always connected to the internet. So you can either have a Wi-Fi model or also have a model that has 3G, so you've got connection to your internet wherever you are. And what we found is sometimes there's use cases where people don't have internet access. So offline storage is a very important concept around applications on the iPad. So storing data offline in a very secure way to make sure that you can access that data anywhere, even if you're on a plane or if you're in a basement or you just don't have internet access. So what I'd like to do right now is just take a brief poll. So if you go to GoToWebinar, there's a poll feature. And what we're really curious is we've obviously got a nice cross-section of people that are interested in the webinar. Do you currently use a tablet at work? So what I'd like you to do is go into GoToWebinar. You should see a poll that popped up saying, do you currently use an iPad at work? So just take a second and answer either you use an iPad, you don't use an iPad, or if you have plans to. So we're just going to take a second and capture everybody's results just to see what people are saying about how they're using iPads today. Okay, so it looks like from the results, about 39% of you aren't currently using an iPad, 35% of you already are, and 25% of you have plans to. So if my math's correct, that's about 60% of you either have one or have plans to. So that's a pretty interesting cross-section showing that people are using iPads or planning to use iPads. So let's look at how those survey results compare to a recent poll done by ChangeWave Research. So this is a poll that was done towards the end of last year, and what they really showed was 7% of corporations currently provide tablets to their employees. 14% were planning to buy tablets by the end of the first quarter of this year, and 78% of those that were going to purchase tablets were planning on purchasing iPads, which isn't surprising because until recently there was no other real option in the tablet market outside of iPads other than Windows tablets and then the Samsung Galaxy Tab, and most recently the Motorola Zoom. So if you look at these survey results, a couple things I'd like to call out. I think the most interesting one is over here on the right, talking about laptop replacement, that 38% of people back in November of last year said that they were using their iPad as a complete laptop replacement. So it's a pretty large percentage of people you're looking at using an iPad instead of a laptop. And then there's a couple of things that you would expect in terms of having it for internet access, working away from the office, or what we're going to talk about a little bit today is sales support and also using it for customer presentations. So just looking at some of the research that's out there, 65% of the Fortune 100 are currently using iPads. And here's some logos from some large corporations that have public case studies on the internet around what they're doing around the iPad. So here's a wide cross-section from medical device company or medical company, Hyatt, obviously a large hotel company, GE, large manufacturer. Best Buy just recently came out and said that they're going to be rolling these out for sales associates on all their different store floors. So a wide cross-section of use cases across some very large corporations. So let's talk about a couple specific examples. Field service is an area that traditionally has been dominated by Windows Mobile, but what we've really seen is that the iPad is a game changer in terms of allowing someone who is a remote field service worker to go look at a piece of equipment in the field, be able to do a dynamic checklist around taking readings from that equipment, checking different specifications, and interacting with the back-end system, whether it's on the cloud or an internal system, to take readings about that, go ahead and close a work order, have information about that specific piece of equipment or that specific customer. Retail execution is very similar to the Best Buy example that I mentioned. So increasingly in stores, you'll see iPads used as a kiosk or used by a store associate to answer questions, perhaps create an order on the floor, have information about products used for wedding registries. There are a wide variety of things that are being done around retail execution in the iPad. This has been very popular in the medical industry. So patient interactions is a very hot space. As you know, a lot of things are changing rapidly in the medical industry. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is our doctors are being able to use these to interact more with the patient, be able to pull up x-rays, pull up a patient's health record, and use some of the really advanced features of an iPad, such as 3D technology, being able to look at different cross-sections of an MRI or rotated image, and walk through the specific lifestyle changes with a patient that can help lead to a healthier lifestyle. They've also been very popular in the hospitality industry. So increasingly you might see this in a restaurant where you walk in and they actually take your order on an iPad, or perhaps the maitre d' or hostess is looking at tables or seating people based on an iPad, using it to check schedules, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that these are used in public-facing industries. And on the enterprise side, one of the use cases that we've seen is very popular is around company key performance indicator, or KPIs. And so this use case really allows an executive or key management personnel who are often traveling to have a nice view of what's happening at their business across a lot of different applications. And this is where the cloud really fits in well with a mobile device such as an iPad. So what we've helped companies do is take all that information from a variety of different back-end systems, host that in a public cloud application, and then have a nice KPI dashboard that allows them to see nice charts, graphs around how's my company doing, what are some of the top sales, what things are going on with my clients, and being able to drill into any specific area or channel that they would like to have more information about. Field sales is another area that the iPad really fits well with. Obviously, within the Apple Store itself, orders are taken. You check out with an iPhone or an iPad. We've created applications, such as this one that allows you to choose options for a specific car and also being able to do things on an iPad such as signature capture with a pen or with a stylus. And you can also integrate a variety of peripherals with an iPad, such as a Bluetooth scanner to do inventory management, or perhaps a credit card swipe to go ahead and take a credit card swipe directly from a mobile device. So they're also being used as a field sales equipment. So now what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes and actually walk through a demonstration of an actual application. So the last thing we talked about was field sales, and what I want to show you now is an example of what a field sales application on the iPad actually looks like. So this is an example not built or branded for a specific company, but focused on the medical device industry. So, as we talked about, this has been a very popular area for iPads is in the life sciences industry. And so the example here is, instead of walking in and talking to a doctor or a dentist and carrying around paper brochures, having an electronic brochure sitting on your iPad, and not just have that be content or a one-off application on your iPad, but all of this information is actually hosted in a back-end cloud system. So that back-end content management system could be something like Salesforce content, or it could be another content repository running natively within your enterprise. And what we try to do is show this content in a very dynamic way, so that if you wanted to see a specific piece of content around a head, say like trauma, I could drill into that. And then I can also have subcategories that sit underneath that, so I can kind of scroll through subcategories and look at different pieces of equipment or subcategories. And this content could be a video, just such as this one around nerve impulses, and be able to show some interesting things around a client. Or it could be static content, such as a PDF. And this is really a nice way to show content to a specific customer. And it's much better, much more interactive than what's possible when you're just kind of specifically working with paper. And so if I want to drill into a different area, say such as like the knees, I can do that and look at a specific piece of content. What's nice about these types of applications is we're storing this content offline in a local encrypted database and making sure that that data is available regardless of whether or not that field sales user has internet connectivity or not, and also storing that in a secure fashion, so that if that iPad was lost or needed to have a remote wipe, that could be done, but people wouldn't have access to that content. So it just, again, the ability to kind of dynamically get into different content, show that in a nice way. And what we found for most field sales companies is you don't have a lot of time with your end customer. So having your content in a compelling format such as this has been very popular and allows you to spend more time with that doctor or with that client. So one of the things that has been very popular with this as well is say that you're walking through an article with a physician, and they're very interested in that piece of content. You can also go ahead and email that directly from the application. So one thing that's very important with an iPad application is remaining that context and staying within the application. So here I am sending an email to Tim Barr, who's one of my contacts that I've synchronized down to this application. It's going to send that article. I could have this email pre-filled with my company branding and go ahead and send him or her a copy of that article. So again, just a quick way to be able to share content with one of my customers and quickly do that, and making sure that all of my field sales workers have a current copy of that content. So the back-end content repository is the source of truth, but then all of that content is stored locally here in my iPad in a safe and secure manner. So one of the questions a lot of our clients ask us is, how do I get started, or what is a customizable application? So what we've done is we've created a lot of different mobile applications across a lot of different verticals, and we looked at what we've done in all these different verticals, and we've created a series of modules that allow us to rapidly create a customizable application for a client. And so the core of this is really these modules here that are built out in blue. So these are the common use cases we've seen a lot of our clients have, regardless of industry, regardless of the use case. Things such as account and contact management, being able to do pre-call planning or call recording. So even if I'm in a consumer product goods industry, maybe walking through and looking at a store shelf, taking inventory, answering questions around a store shelf or a display. Field service is another very popular thing, so integrating with the back-end case management system and being able to do work orders and field dispatching directly to an iPad. doing order entry, integrating with the back-end system in terms of kind of product and price catalog, and doing things such as barcode scanning with a camera or even a Bluetooth device if you need to be able to do rapid barcode scanning for something like inventory management and being able to do signature capture. Digital sales aid is essentially what I showed you, with the medical device, glass man image. Route planning is integrating with Google Maps, so being able to allow your field workers to create a route and see who they're going to be talking to that day. We also have some pre-built modules around life sciences, such as doing sample management, so dropping off samples with a specific physician and doing signature capture, inventory management, and then also business-specific custom modules. So what we've tried to create here is not a product. These are customizable modules that really accelerate the time to value around a mobile application, and these can connect to whatever your backend is of choice, and then work across a variety of form factors. So if you look at some of the Gartner research around what are the CIO priorities for this year, number one is cloud computing, and number two is around mobile. And a lot of the CIOs we talk to, list mobile as something that's very important to them, but they don't know where to get started. So we've kind of broken our mobile area up into a couple different departments. So one is around mobile strategy consulting. So what we try to do is help companies understand where do you get started. Let's look at what your internal applications are and what's a good fit to take to mobile. Talk about device strategy. Is this something that you as a company want to provide to your employees, or is it more that your employees are bringing iPads and iPhones into the enterprise and want to connect these to your back-end system? So talking through all those different options. Once the high-level strategy is set and a few different applications are identified, one of the things we talk about in this phase a lot is not just mobilizing an existing business process, but really using some of the capabilities of these mobile devices to truly drive change in your enterprise. So making sure that you're taking advantage of location-based services or the accelerometer in a phone to do things that weren't possible when you were doing this on paper or had kind of one-off process. So once you've identified that, then we move into actually creating the application. And this could either be leveraging some of those modules I talked about and creating a customizable application, or just leveraging our depth around mobile expertise to create a custom application for you. And then we also offer customer success and enablement to make sure that you're successful, and we can help answer any questions you might have around a mobile application that we've deployed. So now that you have an idea of what's possible, there's a lot of different things that you can do. There's the field sales, there's hospitality, and there's also a lot of applications that are available today on the App Store that are just publicly available that you might not be aware of. So we want to call out a few of these. One is Rumby, which is a really nice analytic tool that plugs into SAP, Salesforce, a lot of different back-end data systems, and allows you to have nice charts and dashboards of your company information, providing some of those key KPIs that I talked about. Applications such as Evernote, allowing you to take notes during a presentation or during a meeting, being able to save those to a cloud backend, and then having access to those on your iPad, your iPhone, as well as your desktop. So being able to have access to your data regardless of the device. As people are looking at iPads as a laptop replacement, one of the kind of last frontiers that a lot of people are wondering about is, can I use this to do presentations for my clients? And the iPad actually does have an application that you can purchase for $10 called Keynote, which is basically Apple's version of PowerPoint. And with an adapter, you can plug that into your iPad and actually plug that into a projector and do your presentations directly from your iPad. So it really is possible to travel without your laptop. And then there's some of the native functionality that's there in the iPad that really allow you to create some powerful applications. There's 3D rendering, which can be used for architecture, for the medical patient interactions. With the new iPad 2, there's a camera, so it allows you to do things that you couldn't do on the old iPad, such as take a picture of a piece of equipment if you're in field service, or perhaps use that for a barcode scan for something in the consumer product goods industry. You can use augmented reality, so being able to use location-based services in addition to the camera, being able to do overlays when you're looking through your camera view to see what type of store that is there, or being able to kind of put a 3D overlay on top of a landscape, for example. And then some of the things that are built into the Apple SDK can do some really interesting things for an enterprise, such as push notifications. So if your enterprise hits a certain KPI threshold, pushing out a notification to people, or if you want to connect a back-end approval process to a mobile device so that when your workers are on the road, they can still have access to approval processes and be able to approve an expense report, for example, you can push those out to people. And one of the things that we found has been very important to make an enterprise application sticky and truly work for a company is utilizing the metadata framework of a backend system. So that's kind of a big fancy word it really means that the mobile application can grow and change with you as your backend system changes. So as you add fields or add tabs to a backend application such as Salesforce.com, your mobile app can grow with it as well, and yet it doesn't require a code change or pushing out an update to all of your users. So you probably know about the iTunes App Store. This is where you go to buy publicly facing applications, buy songs, buy ringtones, such as Keynote or Evernote. But if you want to deploy an enterprise application, it's probably not something that you want to put out there publicly so that your competitors know what you're doing or can get access to it. So what I wanted to call out here is that there's different ways to get an application to your end user's iPad. So within a company, Apple also provides something called an enterprise distribution certificate, and that allows you to create applications for your company, for your internal employees, and you can deploy those without putting that on the App Store. So you can either deploy those applications by email them out to a user. You can also host them on your intranet site, and people can click on those and download those. They can synchronize those applications through iTunes, so drag and drop it into iTunes and synchronize that to their iPad. Or what Apple released about a year ago is over-the-air deployment, which is really a nice way to deploy an application. So this is something where you can actually host the application on your intranet. Your user can just click on a link from their iPad and install the application directly. And a lot of companies that have really have really taken the leap are also starting to build internal app stores, and we're actually helping some companies do this as well around creating internal app stores. So that way people in a certain division, say like the wealth management division, could have access to this application where perhaps the annuity division would have access to these applications. So having an internal app store to allow you to see which users are using which applications and being able to track which version of which application people have downloaded or installed. So it's kind of a nice way to have more management, more visibility across your app stores. So that's pretty much all the content that I was going to go through. What we'd like to do now is open the floor for questions. And since we have a large number of attendees today, we're taking questions directly in GoToMeeting. So if you have a question, go ahead and type those into the question area of GoToMeeting, and then we'll go ahead and answer those.
Thanks, John. We've already got some questions in from the audience here. The first one is, how are you updating remote clients if there's a change in the data source? Pushing the update when they do get connected, so how does that work? I think this came in during the demo.
Okay. So what we've done with within some of these applications, such as the digital sales aid that I showed, if the content changes, while people are out in the field, obviously that's something that's going to happen. Depending on what the deployment method is for a company, you can approach that a couple different ways. One way is to have a trickle sync in the background so that whenever there's an internet connection, you're automatically synchronizing that data in the background and kind of forcing people to have a copy. Or you could also have more of a manual synchronization where people, once they know they're not in front of a client, they can click a button and kind of synchronize the latest copy. So it really depends on what your company policy is around making sure people have that current copy of that data. And it could either be something that happens automatically when the application opens, or it could be kind of a lazy fetch that happens in the background.
Okay. Next question is, do you have an app base for email sending and tracking? So it looks like she's asking if there's a way to track emails that are being sent from an application.
Yeah, that's something that's built into our framework, and I think that is an important point, around especially a lot of the field sales applications that we've done, is tracking what those users are actually doing within that application. And that feedback is important for IT or whoever develops the application to understand what's that click path, helping to optimize that user experience for a user, and also for marketing to understand which pieces of content are very important and are kind of driving more ROI. So tracking where people are clicking and then also what emails are being sent so that you can track the ROI around a specific piece of content.
Next question. Is there an app or technology that allows for remote support of an iPad?
That's a great question. That's one of the things that companies are increasingly looking at as they're rolling out more and more mobile applications or supporting mobile devices. There's a lot of nice applications out there such as Mobile Iron that is what's called an MDM or a mobile device management application. And that allows you to track which devices people have, being able to do remote wipes of those applications if somebody loses an iPad, or if you're offboarding an employee to make sure that you're taking away kind of key company app data. So depending on the number of users you have, the complexity of your applications, and your landscape, a lot of times having more of a mobile device management strategy in place makes a lot of sense to help manage these applications and make sure that you can control who has access to what on which devices.
Next question. Can an internal application store be built with public apps or only internal?
So according to the Apple policy, which is something that you want to make sure that you abide by, the application store is something only for internal applications. The only way that Apple condones distributing applications publicly is through the iTunes App Store. But having an app store internal to your company is fine, and that's a way to distribute applications privately to the employees of your company. The Apple Enterprise Distribution Certificate only allows you to distribute applications to employees of your company, so it's not something that you could use to externally share applications outside of your company.
Next question. What is the average time to build a digital sales aid application?
So what we've done with our customizable application framework is really accelerate that time. So the example we showed has more of a life sciences look and feel. If you're more of a manufacturer, or say you're focusing on products for the home, instead of an image of a human body, that might be a picture of a house, and you can click on the kitchen to see content around the kitchen, the living room, see things around the living room. So a lot of the work that we do, like when we're rolling out something that's very repeatable using one of our frameworks, such as the digital sales aid, is customizing the look and feel for your specific use case. So if it's something very similar to what you saw in terms of showing a picture that's applicable for your industry, and then having kind of content and then sub-levels of content, those applications can really be developed and kind of rolled out in very rapidly. It just depends on kind of what your life cycle looks like, but it could be as quick as like 4 to 6 weeks, including from start to finish, including testing. But a lot of it depends on how many users, how close the look and feel is to what your need is. But we can do things very quickly.
The second piece to that question is, of course, what's the average cost range? And of course, there is a broad range of pricing available for these types of applications. I can answer that one. That really depends on your company's individual requirements. So I know a lot of people are asking questions about price, and we'll reach out to you individually, and we can just have a quick conversation about that. Next question is an interesting one. So this is the iPad 2 just got released, of course, and there's a lot of fun and new things in it, but there's one piece that's not in it, and this question addresses it. Is there an expected date for iPads to have near-field communications, and how do you see this affecting both commerce and trade show behaviors?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know if there's an expected date for it to have near-field communication capability. I know that's something that is a very hot topic. It's been more popular in some of the other countries outside of the United States. I know like the new Google Android Nexus S phone does have that. And what that really allows you to do, and if you're not familiar with it, it allows you to have kind of a low-level radio signal to do things such as mobile commerce. And there's a lot of different use cases that are possible with that. Especially mobile commerce, which I think is a very interesting one. I'm more of the B2C side, but I'm not sure when that's coming to the iPad.
The next question, I think this relates back to the application demo you gave earlier. Can you track emails back into Salesforce?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things within our applications, we could either track that directly kind of based on statistics and kind of metadata of what's happening within our application, or Salesforce itself has a nice feature called Email to Salesforce, where you can create a private email address and make sure that all the content you're sending out of this application would BCC that email address, and that way you would be able to easily track that on the server side without even having to build anything into a specific iPad application.
Next question is, what's the best way to handle Microsoft Office document editing? So I'm an iPad user myself, and when I edit Office documents, I'm usually using some of Apple's native Office equivalents, so things like Apple's Keynote, Pages, or their Numbers applications. John, are there any others that you're aware of that are pretty good?
I think generally the ones that Apple have put out are probably the best. There are some other options that are available. I think that's one of the challenges if you truly want to use your iPad for a desktop replacement, is you probably have to evaluate which Microsoft tools you're using, or make sure that what you're working with is compatible with the rest of your company, and that you have the access to edit things the same as you can from your laptop. But that is a great question.
Next up, can you expand on the Apple distribution licensing implications? I'm not sure I quite understood building the in-house app store. What are the risks, and where do you run into boundaries?
So the way Apple allows you to distribute applications are, first you have to be a member of their developer network, which is a $99 fee. And if you're a member of that network, what that gives you is a development certificate, which allows you to develop applications and put those on specific development test devices you have. And you can also do ad hoc builds, which allows you to distribute an application up to 100 devices, which is great for kind of doing very controlled in-house testing. The challenge with an ad hoc certificate is you need to have what's called the UDID, Unique Device Identifier, of all the different devices that you actually want to be able to deploy that application on. And that ID is actually compiled into your application so that that application physically cannot be installed in any application on any device that that ID was not compiled into. So those are kind of the normal two internal ways that you can do things. And then you can also have a distribution certificate, which is what you use for the public app store. But if you want to do in-house development, Apple has an enterprise program that you apply for, and I think the fee for that is around $299. And that's a process. You need to have a DUNS number. Apple will review some information about your company. And then once they give you that enterprise distribution certificate, you can compile applications with that and deploy those on any device in your company where you don't have to capture those UDIDs from all your different companies' iPad users, iPads, and iPhones. And that allows you to distribute that application to anybody internally within your company. And Apple allows you to have that on an internal app store, that is accessible only to people within your company, but you're not allowed to distribute that outside of your company. So hopefully that helps answer the question. I understand that's a complex question that a lot of people are wondering about.
So here's an interesting question. What is your opinion or vision of developing app-centric applications versus web-centric apps that can be used across multiple devices?
Yeah, that's a big debate in the mobile development space right now. Right now, everything is very application focused. I know if you look at some of the research from Forrester and Gartner, they really predict things moving towards more of a web-centric application over the next 2 to 3 years. Things moving more towards HTML5. I think that's a very good debate. Right now, I'm very solidly more on the application side of things. What we've seen, especially with enterprise clients, is they want to take advantage of some of that native hardware capability, such as the camera, the accelerometer, and then also offline data storage that you just can't do with more of a web-centric application. So HTML5 is great. It works across a lot of different devices. However, the challenge is that it has limited amounts of offline data store. So for example, in Safari, you can store 50 meg of offline data with a web-centric application, which is great for kind of light caching of some things. But for example, like the digital sales aid, generally that's probably several hundred meg of content. Or if you're doing an offline order entry application, you might want to store thousands of products. It's very quickly do you kind of bump up against the limits of some of the offline data store around more of a web-centric view. But I think only time will tell. The reason I say app-centric is Apple's obviously the giant in the space, and everything they're doing is built around their iTunes App Store and more of an application-focused model. So I think as long as they're the dominant player in the space, things are going to stay more in that application view rather than a web view.
And the last question that I have here is sort of related. Does your digital sales aid application support content built in HTML5 by other agencies?
It does. So what I showed in my demonstration is kind of more static content, PDFs, movies, things like that. That content really could be anything. So it could be something more dynamic where that content is actually HTML5 and it's pulling in data from other agencies. Obviously, the challenge with the iPad is it doesn't support Flash, so it would have to be something in HTML5 or a content type supported by Apple. But it really allows you to pull in any type of content that is supported on the device, and HTML5 is certainly something that's very popular. And people are starting to look at that because it allows you to work across more than one device.
All right, we had promised at the beginning of the event that we would get through all of our content in about a half an hour, and it looks like we've done that. I'll wrap things up here by saying if you've got any questions, feel free to give us a call, visit us on the web, or hit us up on Twitter at ModelMetrics Inc. Thank you, John, and thank you, everybody. Have a great day.